For hundreds of years, in villages across Europe, people bolted their doors the second the sun went down. Not because of storms, not because of bandits, because of what the moon was believed to do to certain men. Here's the part that should stop you. This same fear, the exact same monster, shows up in cultures that never met each other. Different continents, different languages, different gods. No internet, no shared books, no way to compare notes. And somehow, they all landed on the same nightmare. A man, a wolf, a line between them that should never be crossed. So what if the wolf was never the point? Let's go back to where it starts. In ancient Greece, there's a story about a king named Lycaon. He angered the gods so badly, they punished him by turning him into a wolf. That story gave us the word we still use today, lycanthropy. Even in one of the earliest civilizations on Earth, the wolfman wasn't just a monster. He was a warning. Cross a line, and you stop being human. Now go north, into the freezing forests of Norse legend. Warriors called berserkers fought in animal-like frenzies, some wearing wolf skins into battle, entering a state so violent, so uncontrolled, that the men around them swore they weren't fighting like people anymore. Accounts describe them biting their own shields, howling before a charge, feeling no pain from wounds that should have dropped them instantly. Enemies reportedly fled at the mere sight of them approaching, because whatever these men had become in that moment didn't behave like something that could be reasoned with or stopped. They were fighting like something else. Different culture, same fear. A man who becomes a beast the moment his humanity slips. Keep going. Medieval France, and one of the darkest chapters in werewolf history unfolds. A creature called the Beast of Gévaudan started killing people. Not one or two, dozens. Villagers armed themselves. The king sent hunters. Entire regions lived in terror for years because the descriptions of this thing made it sound too big, too smart, too deliberate to be a normal wolf. Witnesses described a creature with reddish fur, a chest like a horse, and a tail that whipped like a lash. Some said it could leap distances no ordinary animal should manage. Some said it seemed to choose its victims deliberately, circling back for children who had escaped once already. Farmers stopped sending their kids out alone. Entire villages moved in groups after dark. The King of France eventually dispatched professional wolf hunters and later his own royal gun bearer just to end it. Was it one animal? Several? Something exaggerated by mass panic, retold and reshaped with every terrified survivor's account. Nobody fully agrees, even now. But the fear was real. And fear, once it spreads far enough, doesn't need facts to survive. Now jump continents entirely. In parts of Africa, folklore speaks of were-hyenas, shapeshifters blending human and animal, tied to witchcraft and forbidden power. In South America, indigenous legends describe humans who transform into jaguars, apex predators wrapped in spiritual meaning. In Japan, kitsune, fox spirits, slip between human form and animal cunning, blurring the line between charm and deception. And in parts of North America, stories describe figures capable of taking animal shape to move unseen, feared precisely because they could look like anyone, right up until they didn't. Different continent, different animal, same underlying shape. A human boundary, a creature that breaks through it. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. And patterns have explanations. Anthropologists who study shapeshifter myths across dozens of cultures point to something deeper than borrowed stories. Almost every early human society lived beside real predators. Wolves, big cats, hyenas, creatures that hunted in the dark, moved faster than any human, and represented every fear early people had about losing control, about the wild taking back what civilization tried to tame. Notice something else these predators have in common. They hunt in packs, or they hunt alone in silence. They kill efficiently, without hesitation, without guilt. To an early human mind, trying to make sense of violence it couldn't explain, that kind of cold, deliberate danger needed a shape, a face, something you could picture, fear, and eventually try to kill. A wolf gave that fear a body. So here's the twist. The werewolf was never really about a wolf. It was about the terror of becoming what you fear. Ancient societies didn't have psychology. They didn't have language for uncontrollable rage, for violent breakdowns, for the horrifying possibility that someone you trusted could snap and become a stranger overnight. But they had stories, and stories became containers for fears too big, too formless, too dangerous to say out loud. He turns into a wolf is a much easier sentence than ordinary people can become violent for reasons no one understands. One sentence is a myth. The other one is real and far more disturbing. Here's the part almost nobody knows. The full moon detail, one of the most iconic pieces of werewolf lore, probably has nothing to do with transformation at all. It has to do with visibility. Before electric light existed, a full moon was often the only night bright enough to travel, hunt, or commit crimes safely under moonlight. Farmers moved livestock at night to avoid summer heat. Travelers timed long journeys around the brightest nights of the month. And, inevitably, so did the people looking to do harm, because moonlight meant they could see well enough to act and still move quietly enough not to be caught by lantern light. More people were outside. More people crossed paths in the dark. More strange sightings. More violence. More unexplained events, all clustering suspiciously around the same nights, month after month. Add the psychological weight of superstition on top of ordinary coincidence, and even minor incidents on a full moon night got remembered, retold, and exaggerated far more than identical incidents on any other night. The moon became a magnet for meaning it never actually earned. The full moon didn't cause anything. It just made it easier to get caught and easier to blame. Layer centuries of religious panic on top of that, and the myth stopped being harmless. During certain periods in European history, real people were formally accused, tried, and executed as werewolves. Confessions came from torture, from fear, from desperation, not from actual transformation. The story stopped being something told around a fire. It became a weapon. Take the case of a farmer in 16th century Germany, accused of being a werewolf responsible for a string of brutal killings across his region. He'd lived among his neighbors for years. Unremarkable, ordinary, the kind of person no one looks at twice. Then the killings began. Fear spread, and suspicion eventually landed on him. Under torture, he confessed to wearing an enchanted belt that let him transform at will. He named accomplices, some of them family. He described attacks in vivid, horrifying detail. Details his interrogators fed him, whether he realized it or not. He was executed publicly, in front of a crowd that believed every word, a crowd that needed to believe it, because believing it meant the danger was finally over. Historians looking back now sees something else entirely. A terrified man, broken by torture, telling his interrogators exactly what they wanted to hear, because that was the only way the pain would stop. The wolf wasn't real. The confession was manufactured. But the execution was permanent. Cases like this happened again and again across Europe, in different towns, different decades, always following the same script. A community terrified by unexplained violence. A suspect isolated enough to be blamed. A forced confession dressed up as supernatural truth. The myth gave people something worse than fear. It gave them permission. Permission to point at someone, anyone, and say, there, that's the monster. That's why this happened. It's far easier to burn a scapegoat than to sit with the unbearable idea that violence sometimes has no clean explanation at all. That pattern didn't stay in the 16th century. Every era finds its own version of the same instinct, a way to take something chaotic and terrifying and pin it on a single face, a single name, a single monster, so the rest of the community can feel safe again, even if the story doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Used against the mentally ill, the isolated, the disabled, anyone who didn't fit neatly into their community, anyone easy to blame when something terrible happened and no one had an answer. So here's the real question hiding under the fangs and the fur. If werewolf myths appear on nearly every continent, shaped by different animals, different gods, different centuries, then maybe the wolf was never the important part of the story. Maybe every culture, completely independently, stumbled onto the exact same terrifying discovery, that the line between human and monster isn't guarded by claws. It isn't guarded by moonlight. It's guarded by nothing at all. And that's a far scarier story than any wolf could ever tell. We like to think we've outgrown this, that werewolf trials belong to a darker, more superstitious past, and we're too rational now to fall for it. But look closer. We still do this. We still look for a monster to blame the moment something terrible happens. We still reach for a simple story instead of an uncomfortable truth, a villain, a curse, a single cause we can point to and punish, instead of admitting that people and the world are messier and harder to explain than that. Watch how quickly a crowd online decides someone is the villain before all the facts are even in. Watch how satisfying it feels to have one clear name to blame instead of sitting with a complicated situation that doesn't resolve so neatly. That's not so different from a village 300 years ago deciding a lonely farmer must be the wolf, because a monster with a face is easier to live with than a threat with none. The wolf changed shape. The instinct never did. So the next time the moon rises full and bright, and something in you feels just a little uneasy, understand what you're actually reacting to. You're not afraid of an old myth. You're afraid of something humans have always known, whispered in a different language in every corner of the world. That the beast was never outside the door. It was always a possibility, living quietly inside us, waiting for the right conditions to come out.